Hi, Alyssa. Welcome to Forward Joy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I've followed you for a long time, and I feel like we have so many mutuals and stuff. And so when I started looking for someone to talk to about EMDR, I was like, wait, why don't I was like, I don't follow anyone that like really talks about this. And then, of course, I reached out to Mina, who's one of our mutual friends. So I was like, do you have any therapists in your network that would want to come on my podcast and talk about EMDR? She, for like right away, she sent me her name. I was like, oh yeah, duh, I follow her already. Um, and so this is how this all came to be. And I'm so excited to get into all of your work. You're trained in CBT, EMDR, and you use a psychodynamic and relational lens. And I want to like get into what all of those words mean because I think for anyone who's, approaching therapy and going through their therapeutic journey, you really kind of just like learn along the way, right, of what these things all mean. But I think it's also hard to figure out like what is exactly right for you.
Yep. And it's important because we do use these languages. And then when somebody's looking for a therapist, they want to know, like, what does that mean? How does that apply to me?
Completely.
hmm
So before we go into the deeper psych work, tell me what you were like as a child. Describe like 8-year-old Leah.
Oh, 8-year-old Leah, I feel like was playful, fun. She's still friends with a lot of the friends that she had at that age. Very close with her siblings
Mm,
and just interested in life.
yeah. So when did an interest in psychology come into the picture?
The interest in psychology actually happened by accident. When
Mm,
I was in high school, I wanted to become a social worker. There was something about community activism that was really enticing for me. So then I went to school and I got my sociology degree. You
okay.
can't do much with a bachelor's in sociology. So I was like, what do I do next?
Right.
And then I wanted to further the work as it relates to activism. I was like, oh, is there a degree in this? And so I went and I got a master's degree in social work, hoping that I could do more community organizing,
Hmm.
planning, and things like that. However, all of my internships ended up being clinical social work, which is therapy. And I
Yeah.
really liked it and I never left it.
Wow. I love that. And of course, like the therapy world is so varied. So
It is
did
so
it take time for you to also kind of figure out what type of trainings you wanted to do? Because even like one of my closest friends is a therapist. And so it's really cool seeing her also, you know, go through her own work and start to be really interested in different therapy modalities and then start getting trained in those. And yeah, I love being a bystander to it.
It does take time because the world is your oyster. You can specialize and work with so many different dynamics, people, and experiences. And it takes time because then you meet somebody and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that. Oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that. And then it
Right.
kind of just leads to
They're like, how do you narrow it down?
And you don't have to. You could do a lot of different things, which I think is amazing about the field.
Yeah,
Unless there's like this one thing calling you, then you
right,
just
of
know.
course.
Mhm.
So let's start off with CBT actually.
Okay.
Tell me about CBT and because I feel like that is a widely recognized form of therapy that a lot of people just naturally kind of gravitate towards. Or like CBT has great PR, so everybody knows about it.
CBT really does have great PR. It's like really easy to digest too.
Hmm.
And sometimes it can, a lot of times when people are coming to therapy, they're looking for symptom relief. And
Yeah.
CBT seems to offer that in the way that it's packaged. But really, what CBT stands for is cognitive behavior therapy. And when used to fidelity, the way it was designed, it's a very structured, evidence-based approach to treatment that focuses on the connection between your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. So it
Hmm.
focuses on the way that we interpret situations and how that interpretation interferes or influences the way we feel and act, and therefore how we behave. So the goal is to work on the thinking aspect of things to reduce emotional distress.
who would be the right candidate for CBT? Someone who is struggling with anxiety, depression.
CBT has been very effective for people with both anxiety and depression. Because when a person has anxiety, one of the cognitive distortions that they tend to lean to often is catastrophizing.
Right, of
Worst case
course.
scenario, jumping to
Yep.
conclusions. Depression, it's a lot of self-deprecation. And so helping them learn and understand what type of distortions they're engaging in and
Mm-hmm.
teaching them actual practical skills to challenge that thinking
Mm-hmm.
is really helpful.
Right.
So CBT is very skills based.
Mm-hmm. But there are also real limitations to it as well, right? Because of maybe just the way that it is so focused on the intellectual level of it all.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so there are limitations to it, especially for people where, there was this quote that was going really viral on social media. It was like, you can't CBT your way out of systemic oppression. A lot of times the depression and
Right.
anxiety that people experience is incredibly real, and it was not meant to be CBT through.
Yeah. Actually, my friend that I referenced before, who is a therapist, she had once suggested, maybe you should look into a trauma-informed therapist. And I took it to my therapist at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think." He was basically like, "I don't think you really need it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I just like, I don't know, I felt aligned with that because I also thought, people have a lot of feelings about the word trauma and whether or not what they've experienced really fits under that term because that term is so dramatic or feels very dramatic, right?
Mm-hmm. Feels very narrow too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then of course, when I started working with a trauma-informed therapist, I was like, oh yeah, this actually really was right for me. But also, it's not to say that the work that I did before wasn't effective. Like it still worked, and I've still learned so much. And the approach that I've always taken is, I mean, as I said, I've been in therapy since I was 11. I've probably worked with like 8 different therapists, and um, you know, I like to switch therapists. I think on average I've changed about every 4 years or so because I think as I work with someone and I'm doing the work and I'm someone who's very, very committed to doing the work. So I just kind of keep leveling up and I can recognize when I need something different or I'm just not really getting to where think I need to be. And so I feel like, yeah, I have really leveled up in my therapy journey, and that has led me to where I am right now, which is I'm working with a trauma-informed IFS therapist who also knows astrology because I'm super into astrology.
Look
And
at
it's, I
that.
know, and it's
So
really nice to have
specific.
someone who just speaks
Hmm.
the language. Like I don't even incorporate it all that often into session, but if I wanted to just be like, I feel like this is coming from my Capricorn moon, my therapist knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And then she also does brain spotting.
Oh, good.
Um, so yeah, that's been really interesting. But EMDR is something I've heard so much about. I've had a lot of friends who have been doing it. Um, and so, yeah, I would love for you to talk more about it because I know my audience also is very curious about what exactly is EMDR.
Okay. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it's a psychotherapy approach that helps people heal and process traumatic experiences. So the idea is that traumatic experiences are stored within our body,
Hmm.
and oftentimes it can get suppressed. And EMDR is based on the idea that these memories or even the physical sensations of the experiences get stuck. They become stuck in us in an unprocessed form. And because of that, we experience distress, we experience anxiety, we experience flashbacks or negative beliefs, self-deprecating thoughts, even after the event has long passed. So that is what EMDR is based on. EMDR is not a talk therapy. It is a
Right.
bottom-up approach. So it's working with the somatic experiences of the body. And then it uses your eye movements to go back and forth. And sometimes
Hmm.
an EMDR therapist will use their fingers. Other times they have an electrical light bar. Other
Right.
times they have something you hold in your hands that buzz in each hand and you have your eyes closed. People
Hmm.
also do EMDR virtually where you're following something on your screen back and forth.
Oh,
Yes.
that's cool. I didn't know that was possible.
So the back and forth experiences with your eyes used in EMDR, that's known as bilateral stimulation.
Hmm.
And EMDR has, I want to say, I'd have to go back and check, but I believe 8 phases.
Hmm.
And one of those phases is you are identifying what traumatic experience you want to target. And
Right.
you have options. You can target the very first thing that's ever happened to you
Hmm.
that you remember that was painful, the very worst thing that has happened to you,
Hmm.
or the most recent. So it's best, worst, most recent.
Okay.
And the way
Interesting.
it's determined is which one is distressing you right now? Which one do you want to process right now that's causing you the most distress?
Mm. Is it possible for it to be like too intense for people?
Yeah.
Because, right? Because obviously it's like if something is sitting in the body in a weird way, chances are, even though you're not talking about it, you still, as part of EMDR, you still have to, um, and you can kind of take us through the process because it does require you to bring up that memory, right? Or
Mhm.
focus on whatever sensations happen.
Yes. And so that's why, so I mentioned that EMDR has phases. One
Hmm.
of those phases, it's in the beginning, you are working on helping the client develop something called the safe calm place, which is a place that they can retreat to psychologically when they're
Mm.
feeling overwhelmed, when they're feeling distressed. It's a place that
Hmm.
they can then go to so that their body can self-regulate.
Okay.
And then it's not like, you're kind of being thrown into this thing. Within each bilateral stimulation, there's a pause, and you talk to your therapist about what came up for you. What did you notice?
Right. Yeah. That's kind of a similar thing with, I don't know. Are you also familiar with brain spotting?
No, I'm not. Is
Okay.
it similar?
Yes, I feel like it's been touted as like a lighter version of EMDR. So like when I do it in session with my therapist, I do it self-guided. So basically, like as I'm talking, if and sometimes she'll call it out, but like she'll notice, like, oh, your eye is going, to the right. So she's like, why don't you focus on that point? So you basically meditate on an eye point that apparently is connected to where the memory is stored in your brain.
Oh.
And I've had like one or two pretty profound experiences with it. I wouldn't say like, things don't come up all the time, but one of the very first times I did it, I just like got hit with this like very crazy, not crazy in a bad way, but a sort of like intense vision of myself that felt like it was very connected to one of my like core wounds. But then you also have a place like you identify an eye spot that you can go to where you can connect to that feeling of like safety, expansion. Yeah, so they sound very very similar, but I've never done EMDR. So I always have this association that like EMDR is like quite intense, and brain spotting is yeah like a lighter version.
EMDR light.
Yeah,
Uh,
EMDR light.
and so the reason why with EMDR our eye movements are going back and forth because
Hmm.
it's said that when we're able to move our eyes that way
Yeah,
in that motion, the bilateral stimulation, we're mimicking what happens when we sleep. Because when we sleep, our eyes are going back
right,
and forth. When we sleep,
right.
and that's processing. That's processing the day, and it's kind of storing things like long-term memory, short-term memory.
Yes.
And so when we're going back and forth with our eyes or
Hmm.
whatever other tool the therapist is using, it's helping to reprocess the traumatic event so that it can become unstuck
Right.
in your brain.
And like move through the body. Yeah.
Yes,
And I
yes.
also listen to bilateral stimulation music
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm doing brain spotting. And now, my therapist is like, you can use it. anytime. So
Yeah.
sometimes I also use it. I went on a walk yesterday and I just listened to my bilateral stimulation for
And
my walk.
it's helpful too. I've used it just like sitting on a plane,
Right.
falling
Oh,
asleep, you know?
I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm gonna try that
Because
next time. That's a
you're already there and there's
right.
nothing to do.
Right.
It might
No,
as
that's
well.
such a good tip.
Uh-huh.
I love that. I guess that's the thing that can be very tricky about it is that if you're like going to therapy for the first time and yeah, you just want to work through whatever you've been dealing with, you don't really know what's right for you until you just kind of like dive in and start working on things with someone, and then you kind of figure out what the right fit is as you go along. Of course, hopefully the clinician you're working with can assess whether or not something is really right for you or not. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of things are also probably just really learned in practice.
Mhm. And regardless of the treatment approach, I mean, it also depends on what the diagnosis is,
Yeah.
but the research has shown that it is the relationship with the therapist over the
Oh,
modality. Mhm.
oh my God.
It's the relationship.
Interesting.
That's why when you're saying like, oh, with this person, they do astrology and they do this, it's like
Right.
that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense that it is the fit for what you need now because there's also a good relationship there with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, yeah, that's really interesting
It's
that
the
I mean,
relationship that moves the treatment forward
yeah.
more than the modality that they're practicing. The
Okay.
modality helps.
Right, of
The
course.
modality helps. Yeah, yeah. So if you're looking for a certain modality, also
Yeah.
prioritize the feelings towards that therapist
Right.
in your
Yeah.
relationship with them.
I feel like I've been very lucky. My last couple of therapists have been really fantastic, especially the one that I was working with before my current one. I actually didn't want to leave her, but she went on maternity leave, and then I started working with my current therapist. And then as I started working with her and we were trying brain spotting, I was like, oh, I think actually this is what I need because I'm a real intellectualizer and I love psychology. I read psychology books on my own. I don't have any kind of degrees, but I know a lot because I just spend a lot of time reading. And so it's like I can therapize myself all
Mhm.
day long. So I think the brain spotting is also really helpful in the same sense of EMDR because I don't have to talk as much. And that's actually a struggle for me because I love to talk. And so I love to talk in therapy. Um, and so I'm trying to also kind of balance that right now in my sessions of, um, sometimes, yeah, I just do need to focus on brain spotting versus, um, you know, just recapping my last week. Sometimes I'm like, I need two sessions. Like, I need one where I can just like talk about what happened to me in the last week. And then I need one where it's like we really focus on the overarching
For
work.
integrating the information.
Yes.
Hmm.
Right. Because, yeah, I'm like,
Well,
I need it all.
yeah. You can go as much or as little as you like, actually.
I know my therapist
Yeah.
is expensive and I pay out of
Oh,
pocket. So,
okay, okay, okay. Because yeah, you can go as little or as much as you like. The entire experience of like 50 minutes once a week or whatever, that's the medical model.
right.
And there actually is like a form of psychotherapy where it is highly recommended you go at least 3 times a week and have those sessions be back to back. It's like psychoanalysis.
Oh, psychoanalysis. Yes.
Mhm.
Do you
Helps
do that
slow
as
things
well?
down. I don't do it,
Okay.
but I'm very interested in it.
Mm.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be like another 4-year program to become a psychoanalyst.
Oh my
It's a
God.
yeah, to become a psychoanalyst, it's another program.
Yeah.
But it's it's an intensive form of in-depth therapy that helps you slow down your thinking patterns.
Mm. Is that something you people do for an extended period of time, like for a year, longer than a year?
Yeah,
Say like for 2 years, you would just
yeah,
go to therapy 3 times a week, back to back.
yeah. Yeah, back to back.
That is very, I know. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm like, do you see the smile on my face? I'm like,
I'm
this
like,
really,
wow.
I know. I'm like, this really
I love the
entices.
intensity of it. Hmm.
This
Hmm.
really entices me. I don't think I really need therapy 3 times a week, though. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it can be.
But I have also thought about whether EMDR could be right for me because I really struggle with emetophobia, fear of throwing up.
Hmm.
It's something that has like dominated my life for, I mean, since I was a kid. And yeah, it's not something I've been able to really work on in therapy because talk therapy is just not right. I don't talk about it very often like with anyone because it's so uncomfortable for me and brings up a lot of physical sensations and um so yeah, I'm like or I need to get hypnotized.
Is that what you're working on right now in therapy?
Not entirely, but I've struggled with anxiety. And so basically all of my issues are rooted in control and not wanting to feel out of control. Like I really struggled with a fear of flying for many years. I couldn't get on a plane. So for me, like the fear of planes and my fear of throwing up feel kind of intertwined in a
Yeah.
sense, but I have been able to get over my fear of flying. Like I fly all the time now, and it's just, you know, um, I think it's harder because I got over my fear of flying because of exposure therapy, of just
Yeah.
doing it. And you can't
Yeah.
do that with throwing up. I've addressed it a little bit just through the
Mhm.
yeah, of focusing on like what it feels like for my body to feel out of control.
EMDR can help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether
I
it's
think that would probably be my next step.
whether it's getting to the root of it or doing just the exposures around it.
Yeah.
So, every therapist is different, but one thing it could just be exploring any memories or sensations associated with throwing up,
Yeah.
just like the root cause of it.
Right.
And if you can't get to the root cause of it, then it's just focusing then on the fear around it. And then
Yeah.
you're just seeing what comes up, like what is connected to this.
Yeah.
Because then
I
like see the fear, see the throwing up, right? As like the tree, the tree stump. This is what we
yeah,
see. This is what's bothering you. But then
right.
below are all these different roots that are
Roots.
connected to it. And so when you're doing EMDR, you're just like, you're going down this route.
Yeah.
You're clearing it up, going down this one. And
Right.
that's what EMDR is doing just to help understand what this is.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually just wrote for my newsletter
Mhm.
at the top of May
Mhm.
about my very first panic attack, and it was brought on because when I was in middle school, a kid threw up on the school bus.
Mhm.
And so I like made it through the day and I think I thought I was okay, but I was a little like preoccupied by it. And then I couldn't go to school for the next 3 days because I was scared that if I went to school, I was going to throw up.
Okay. So with EMDR, let's say you decide to do EMDR, you would
Yeah.
focus on that memory and see what's
Right.
connected to it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that whole, it's just so funny when I think back on it. I'm like that whole incident like changed the trajectory of my life because I suddenly just became afraid of everything
Yeah.
and things that I previously was never afraid of. Like I used to be a dancer and, I did school plays and I loved being on stage. And then I couldn't get on stage. I couldn't get back on the school bus. I couldn't get back on the school bus for years. Couldn't perform because I was terrified again that like maybe I would get so nervous that I would get sick. Um, yeah. And so it's kind of been something I have then, of course, like had to organize my life around.
I have two questions, kind of
Mm.
separate. One is, can you do roller coasters?
I used to be able to, and I
Okay.
can't anymore. Or I don't even know, like, the last time I even went on a ride. Not since my anxiety started, for sure. But previously, I loved them.
Okay. Two, can
Mm.
you fly economy?
Wait,
I
that's
asked that.
so funny.
I yes, well, because I've treated plane anxiety, I've treated flight anxiety before, and typically when somebody has severe flight anxiety, it helps if they can fly first class
I know. And
or
so,
business, but then going back to economy almost kind of like reactivates the feeling. So there's
so I
you don't
guess
have to answer it if you don't.
no.
We can also cut it out.
Um, so since when the pandemic hit, I
Mhm.
took I mean, I didn't fly for, I think it was like, no, 20 months. a lot of people were kind of still flying around and I didn't. And so when my first work trip came back, or when my first work trip came up where I was
Mhm.
going to get on a plane,
Mhm.
I booked myself a business class ticket because I was just like, I don't want to. It was also like, in the news, there was like so many headlines about people getting into fight on the airplanes about wearing masks and this and that. And I was like, if I like see that going on, like I'm going to have a meltdown. I just really don't want to see that. And not to say that it can't happen in business class, but like at least in business class, like you're in your little like pod and you can kind of ignore what else is going on. And so since 2021, I almost exclusively fly business, at least for long haul flights. Then when I'm in Europe, yes, occasionally like I will still fly economy because it's a two.
Especially if the planes are small and they don't have any other
Right,
option.
and it's just like it's a 2 hour flight. I can make it, but
Mm.
it does make me uncomfortable. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I love that you asked that because, and it's funny because sometimes it's like, oh, I feel like people think that I'm being a princess because I'm like I only fly business, but I'm like, no, part of it is actually because it just makes my anxiety better,
Yes,
and that is something I have like designated in my life is like a worthy expense because
as you should.
it makes me feel better. So, yeah, I think EMDR is definitely something that I would, absolutely explore in the future.
Mm.
Um, how do you approach people who I think are kind of quick to dismiss that they don't need trauma therapy or like that they don't have trauma? Because I think, people will do a lot of like, oh, well, other people had it worse than me.
Mm. You acknowledge that severity lies on a spectrum,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that what happened to them wasn't traumatic for them.
Hmm.
And so even that sentence can be used to help highlight a high level pattern. Like, do you have a pattern of dismissing yourself or your needs or your experiences elsewhere?
Hmm.
You zoom out because even just that sentence is very telling.
Right.
There's a saying too, like a person who drowns in 6 feet of water and a person who drowns in 3 feet of water, still drowning. So
Definitely. Yeah.
you kind of just help them see that it's valid. Like what happened to you is valid.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Vienna Farron. Do you know her, therapist?
Oh
She's
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
mindful MFT on Instagram. So Vienna Farron is also a guest on my podcast this month, and she wrote a book in 2023 called The Origins of You. And so she talks about these sort of like five core wounds that people, can have, whether it's from started in childhood, anything that happened through their families to early adulthood. And it's like, a safety wound, priority wound. Um, and so I think that language is also really helpful for people because someone hears trauma and they immediately think like abuse, rape,
Mhm.
you almost died in a car accident. But I think that's also how I felt when I started thinking about, whether trauma therapy was right for me. I was like, I don't have trauma, but I do. It's just not in the way that, yeah, we come to expect what trauma is supposed to mean. But I'm like, I've, struggled with abandonment issues, and a lot of that is actually just like generational. I know you're a child of immigrants, right? Or no, you
I
weren't.
am an immigrant. Yeah.
You are an immigrant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Both child of immigrants and one.
Right. And
Hmm.
so, my parents are both immigrants. I'm first generation. And yeah, there's a lot of history of abandonment in my
It's
family
passed down.
lineage. And so, yeah, it's something that I have spent a lot of time unpacking. Even though I haven't actually been abandoned in the traditional sense, like I grew up with both of my parents.
Hmm. And it can
So,
get really confusing, right? Because we're
oh,
trying to justify it.
beyond.
Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this way when people have had it worse? I didn't go through anything. I had X, Y, and Z. And I think when people get stuck on the diagnosis, then it's just important to focus on the symptoms.
Mm,
What are you
right.
feeling? How is it impacting your life? How do you feel about yourself? How is it? And then let's go there, because then we can really get caught up in the semantics.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, Also back to EMDR for a second.
Mhm.
I once read that walking
Yeah.
is like a form of the EMDR because, right, you're scanning your surroundings. And so that's why walking helps us process emotions, right?
Yes.
I love
Yes.
I
There,
love that.
yeah. And, walking is good for all of us in general.
Of
But if
course.
we're using walking like as an intentional form of processing our emotions,
Hmm.
if we have the privilege, not all walks are the same.
Hmm.
So a walk in a very intense, busy neighborhood with sirens might not feel the same as a walk in a quiet suburb or in the forest. So I
Yeah,
just want people to keep that in mind when they're going for walks and like, oh, this was supposed to help me. Like think
right.
about the
The
where
setting.
you're walking, what
Yeah,
the
for sure.
environment is too. But yes, walking is supposed to help with reducing emotional distress.
Mm. Yeah, it has become a major tool for me in self-regulation. I always like I'm a very sensitive person, highly sensitive. And so I really struggled to self-regulate, and that's something I've really worked on in the last few years. So walking has become so vital to that. And anytime that I would feel this like really, overwhelming swell of emotions, it's like, okay, I got to put my sneakers on and go outside. Sometimes I do it while I'm like, and I talk to myself and like talk to my inner child. I feel like those two hand in hand, like truly rewired my brain.
Mhm. It helps you slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps you stabilize.
What does this psychodynamic and relational lens mean?
Mhm. Psychodynamic and relational lens is referring to our earlier childhood experiences and helping clients understand how those experiences have an effect on the way they experience the world now.
Mm,
Oftentimes, people come into therapy with a presenting concern. And with that presenting concern, they kind of just want to talk about the present moment and that.
hmm.
A solution-focused therapist might work on strategies and skills to target what you're experiencing now. A psychodynamic therapist might ask questions about earlier childhood experiences, your relationship with your friends, your
Mm,
self-esteem back then, your relationship with your parents, to help you understand any patterns in what you're experiencing,
right.
any patterns, and to also help you understand how and why you're experiencing things the way that you are. So it focuses on earlier attachment relationships. And
Mm,
when people think about attachment, it doesn't always have to be with your parents. It can be, that's like,
right.
but it's whoever your primary caregiver was too.
Right.
Siblings, babysitters, teachers.
Mm,
It takes into account pretty much all
like,
of your relationships.
right. From that early age. Yeah.
Mhm.
I know I feel like people don't often think about who can have impacted your attachment outside of your parents
Mhm.
because
And a lot of
there's,
people can.
right.
A lot of people can, especially if you had a coach, or especially if
Mm,
you had an aunt and uncle. Like what were those earlier relationships like? How did you experience them? What were your earliest memories of feeling alone? What were your earliest memories of feeling supported? And what is be and how are those experiences being brought up for you now?
right. How do you know when the EMDR is working for your client?
When you start EMDR and you identify what the target memory is,
Hmm.
you also ask, how distressing is this to you now as you experience it in this moment? From like 1 to 10, 10 being the most distressing. And if
Hmm.
they say 10, 20, and then at the end of each session, you can recap how distressing is it for you now. It might still be a 10. The next
Mm,
session you do it, you're asking at each session, you're getting a marker of
mm,
how distressing it is. So for me
right.
personally, I'm seeing progress when it's going from a 10 to a 9.7, and then eventually down to whatever number they've identified is like tolerable for them. 3. I've seen it go
Yeah,
down to a 0.
right. which is so incredible. And I've
Mhm.
even seen that with some of my friends, who have done it, where, yeah, it just feels like one day they're suddenly like, yeah, I'm not as activated anymore, or I'm not
Mhm.
as bothered by whatever the thing is.
I can think about this without my entire being shutting down. I can think about this without it affecting my whole day, without it affecting my ability to work. And more importantly, I can think about it.
Right.
I'm not
Without,
avoiding it anymore.
yeah, or without having this like overwhelming reaction. The mind and the body are truly, it's just like I love learning about this stuff. So like I could, yeah, I'm like I could listen to this all day because I just think it's so important, for people to be able to move through the world with like a little bit more ease if they can.
Everybody deserves ease.
Yeah. And hopefully we can imagine, or we would all love to imagine one day that there is a world in which all of this stuff is more accessible for people.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree.
What's something that you do just for yourself? What's bringing you joy?
Oh my gosh. Great question. I actually have it in front of me.
Do
My
you?
inner child used to play the flute. And so now as an adult, I'm taking flute lessons. I can play,
Oh my
I can
God, I
sing you
love
happy birthday.
that.
It's like right behind my computer. Um,
I
yeah, that's
love
what's
that.
bringing me joy. Learning, playing the flute. Um,
It's so fascinating to
Loved
me
ones. Hmm.
how the things that we loved as a child, sometimes they're the first things we kind of like push away and we're
Yeah,
too busy for them
right.
and we don't make a place for it in our lives until
Hmm.
we kind of, have this adult epiphany or whatnot
Hmm.
and just have the balls to pick it back up again. And then you're like, oh yeah, shit, this like helps me connect to my inner child. Like this is what really
Yeah.
brought me joy.
Why did I stop doing that?
Why did I stop doing it?
Hmm.
I love that for you.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to, I hope you post some videos
Oh yeah,
of you playing.
I'm gonna have a recital with a bunch of little kids
You
because
have
I'm
to
the
post
only adult in the class.
you have to post some
Yeah,
videos for
I
us
will.
on social media,
Yeah, I will.
please. Leah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Chrissy. It was nice having this discussion.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Bye.